Chip Ganassi Racing announces that Jimmy Johnson will be testing one of their Indy cars at Indianapolis Motor Speedway next week, and NASCAR is bringing the orange cone back for the All-Star race. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric, and welcome to Out of the Groove. We have a lot to talk about today. Jimmy Johnson, of course, making some news. NASCAR is bringing the choose cone to the Bristol All-Star race in an experimental fashion. Brad Keselowski, still unknown what he's going to do next season. We have some new rumors there. We will get to all of that this morning in this video, but I want to start with news from yesterday. NASCAR has officially canceled their end-of-year banquet ceremony awards thing in Nashville. It's been canceled for the 2020 season. In a statement, NASCAR said that the three champions of their three major series will still be celebrated at the end of the season, but there will be more details as to how that happens coming later on. NASCAR also says in the statement that they are planning to return to Nashville for the award ceremony next year in 2021. Of course, NASCAR is making this announcement due to the ongoing pandemic. It is a little surprising that they would announce it this early on. The banquet, award ceremony, all that was not scheduled until December, so still 6 months away approximately. I figured they'd wait a little longer to make an announcement, but not entirely shocking. That announcement did come. Just surprised that it happened so early, but not shocking. NASCAR, of course, has no intentions on leaving Nashville anytime soon. 2021, like they said, they will be back, hopefully, all things considered. Of course, in 2021, Nashville Super Speedway is now on the schedule for earlier in the year, so they will NASCAR will become commonplace in Nashville, Tennessee next year. Unfortunately, though, the banquet has been canceled for this year, but there's the news there. Nothing else really to react to. It just is what it is. Now, while we're on the topic of Tennessee, let's talk about one of the most popular tracks in NASCAR that happens to be located on the Tennessee-Virginia border. Bristol Motor Speedway, of course, will host the NASCAR All-Star race in just about 2 weeks, Wednesday night, July 15th. I'm going to be there. I'm extremely excited. 30,000 fans will be allowed to attend that race. This is the first All-Star race in Bristol Motor Speedway history. I'm extremely excited for it. NASCAR has already announced a few experimental changes for this race. Most notably, all of the paint schemes will feature the numbers on the door moved towards the rear of the car ever so slightly to give more room for sponsor logos. But that is no longer the biggest change planned for this year's All-Star race. Reported by The Athletic late last night, NASCAR plans to implement a choose cone rule for restarts in this year's All-Star race. Now, those of you who frequently stop by your local short track or your local dirt track might have seen some form of the choose cone rule put into place before, but we have not seen it in the NASCAR Cup Series ever. A basic idea of what the choose cone rule is that every driver in the field from first back to 40th will get to choose what lane, top or bottom, they'd like to restart in. Typically, the way it works at most short tracks is once the drivers are given the 1 to go signal, during a caution, and they usually start to double file up, a cone is placed in the middle of the start finish line. And as the drivers go down the straightaway, they will choose whether or not they want to start on the outside or the inside by driving either to the right or the left of the cone. Now, currently, the way the rule works in NASCAR is that only the leader, only the driver in first place gets to pick which lane they start in. Everybody else, if you're an odd number running position, you start on the inside. If you're an even number running position, you start on the outside. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But with the choose cone rule, theoretically, every single driver would get to choose what lane they wanted to start in. So in theory, first place might pick the outside, second place might also pick the outside, so they'd line up right behind each other. Now third place, who would usually have to start on the inside of row 2, might choose the bottom. They might say, hey, I'll risk it because I get to start a little closer to the front, and so that third place car could move all the way up to the front row, but they will be on the maybe lesser preferred lane. So in theory, if the top 5 all wanted to start on the top, they could. And 6th place would get the option to maybe start on the front row if they wanted to. They'd just be in the lesser preferred line. That's basically how it works. Every driver in the field gets to choose which lane they want to start in, and they can make that decision based on a wide variety of factors. Now, this will be at use at the All-Star race, July 15th at Bristol Motor Speedway. I think it's great. The All-Star race is the perfect testing ground for NASCAR to try things like this out. And also, Bristol Motor Speedway is a track where lane choice can be very important, depending on how your car's handling, what your tires look like. Restarting on the inside or the outside could mean the difference between you contending for the victory or losing 2 or 3 spots on the initial start. So I think this is a good experiment to run at Bristol Motor Speedway specifically. There are a few tracks on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule that I think would benefit from a choose cone rule. I think back to the 2 Darlington races races about a month ago, the inside lane was at a significant disadvantage on every single restart. It was hard to watch good cars and good drivers get kind of screwed on restarts at the end of that race just because of where they had to restart because of where they were running. The guy running in third should never be at a disadvantage compared to the guy running in fourth. And so there are tracks like Darlington, most notably, I would say even like Martinsville, where the inside often is preferable on restarts, especially depending on how far back in the field you are. Throw Bristol into the mix as well are some of the most notable tracks where I believe a choose cone rule could be extremely beneficial. Now that being said, I don't think every track in NASCAR needs a choose cone. I think many of the intermediates, the mile and a halfs, obviously the super speedways, I don't think the choose cone should be implemented, at least not yet. And while I am excited for NASCAR to experiment with this at Bristol Motor Speedway, I am worried about how the general fan base is going to respond if this becomes commonplace in every race, like next season, for example. Because this is another new rule that does add an extra layer of perhaps confusion or complication to what NASCAR restarts look like. Now, that being said, NASCAR fans are likely used to seeing restart procedures change dramatically. I mean, even in the amount of time I've been a fan, restarts have changed significantly. When I first started watching NASCAR, restarts were primarily single file. They'd line up the lap cars on the inside lane up by the leaders, but that's very different than the double file restarts we have today, where now the lap cars are always in the back with the wave round cars. You know, that's two very different restart procedures, and what, they got rid of single file restarts, was it 10, 12 years ago, something like that? I'm sure most NASCAR fans would be able to figure out the choose cone rule pretty quickly, but right now in a time where NASCAR, let's be honest, there are a lot of new eyes watching NASCAR. There are newer fans jumping in and trying to watch races week to week, giving it a shot. Something like the choose cone could be just another layer of confusion that turns some people away. I'm not sure if that's true. I think overall it's a relatively minimal change, but I think it will make a big difference specifically at some of the tracks I mentioned earlier. And I think Bristol is a great place to test it out. Of course, the All-Star race is the perfect chance to test something like this out. In theory, if it's selectively used at particular racetracks, I think it'll be a huge success, but I will wait and see how things play out. I'll see how it's implemented at the All-Star race. I assume they're actually going to put an orange cone on the track and like yank it back with a rope like they do at most short tracks. I assume I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy who has the job of pulling the cone back before the green flag. That would be fun. But anyway, that will be interesting to see. Now let's talk about Jimmie Johnson, because he also made an announcement of his own yesterday that was kind of surprising. Of course, Jimmie Johnson, 7-time NASCAR Cup Series champion, has said that 2020 will be his final year in the NASCAR Cup Series, racing full-time at least. But he has made it very clear that this will not be his last year racing. And he has made it also very clear in recent months that he is interested in racing some road course races in the IndyCar series next year and maybe beyond. Yesterday, news broke from Chip Ganassi Racing that Jimmie Johnson will be testing one of their Indy cars this coming week at Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the road course configuration. Of course, this weekend there's a NASCAR IndyCar doubleheader with IndyCar racing on the road course alongside the Xfinity Series on Saturday, and then the Cup Series racing on the Big Oval Sunday. That's going to be awesome. That's going to be historic. There's going to be a lot of Cup Series and IndyCar drivers, you know, kind of bumping elbows in the garage. Actually, maybe not literally with social distancing and everything. There probably won't be a whole lot of physical contact in the garage, but they will all be there in the same vicinity at the same time, so that's pretty cool. But now it sounds like Jimmie Johnson will be hanging around after the weekend is over. He is set to test on Wednesday in a Chip Ganassi Racing IndyCar, so that will be interesting to watch. I'm not sure if it's going to be open to any sort of media, if we're going to see photos, videos. I'm sure someone somewhere will share something. Jimmie himself will probably vlog the thing. He's like a vlogger now. Everyone's a YouTuber now. Nah, but I think it's really cool. Jimmie Johnson, of course, has been a great ambassador for NASCAR for 20 years nearly. It's great to see him step out of his comfort zone, perhaps, into something a little bit different. I mean, if he races IndyCar next year, which it sounds very likely he will make at least one start probably next year, I will be rooting for him. I will be tuning in and I will be watching to see what he does and see how he does. I know Jimmie has not had the success the last couple of years in NASCAR that he's used to, but there's no doubt in my mind, and shouldn't be any doubt in anyone else's mind, that Jimmie Johnson is still a very good, just race car driver in general. Clearly, he's in great shape, still running marathons pretty much every year, so stepping into an IndyCar, which doesn't have power steering, you saw in that video, he's holding weights. I mean, that's kind of funny to me. I didn't really realize that. I guess that's what drivers do. I mean, think about it. What muscles do race car drivers use the most? It's, you know, like in your arms, it's like right here, turning a wheel. I don't know. Maybe Jimmie was just doing that for show and I'm reading too much into it, but I never really thought about how NASCAR drivers actually weight lift and work out. I mean, obviously, you know, you want to be in good shape, you'll lift all sorts of weights, but, you know, this might make a lot of sense. Anyway, I'm off topic. Anyway, what makes this interesting though is that Jimmy Johnson is working with a specific team. He's working with Chip Ganassi Racing to conduct this test. Chip Ganassi owns an IndyCar team. He also obviously owns a NASCAR team. So I guess bridging the gap there shouldn't be too surprising, but now it looks like Jimmy Johnson might actually have a team and a car that he is planning to drive in, I don't know, select IndyCar races next year. He hasn't said how many he wants to run. He said he wants to run road courses, not ovals. So go ahead and rule out the Indianapolis 500 for now. He is testing the road course configuration next week. So we'll see what he does in 2021, but I will be watching. I'm a Jimmy Johnson fan. He's done great things for NASCAR for many years. I want to see what he can do in something else, and I'll be cheering for him. Hopefully he gets a win or gets at least a really strong run wherever he's going. And speaking of NASCAR drivers and their future, the last thing I want to talk about in this episode are some new rumors around Brad Keselowski, probably the highest profile free agent currently on the NASCAR market. He is in a contract year with Team Penske. Rumors have had him going pretty much everywhere at the end of this season. Keselowski, of course, a champion, one of the winningest drivers in NASCAR currently. He has not had any sort of contract negotiations with his current team owner, Roger Penske, per Adam Stern. Per his report, some people close to the team think that the two sides could still eventually strike a deal, though Roger Penske may try to negotiate new terms first. Now, I made my silly season predictions episode over 2 months ago, and at the time I predicted Brad Keselowski's run with Penske would come to an end and that he would go to Hendrick Motorsports next year and likely replace Jimmy Johnson. I still think that is a very likely option, and seeing this report honestly makes me feel even better about my decision. Now, obviously, Roger Penske's a smart guy. He knows Brad Keselowski is a very good driver, but he also understands perhaps where costs may need to be cut. Brad Keselowski is a champion. He has won a lot of races in his career. He more than likely demands a pretty significant salary, and unfortunately, this year Miller Lite, longtime sponsor of that 2 car, has virtually dropped off the face of the earth. They sponsored one race as the primary this year, and it was the Coke 600 a few weeks back. They're barely on the car beyond that one race. With one of the two teams' major partners virtually backing out at this point, it wouldn't shock me if Roger Penske looked to go for a cheaper option, possibly a rookie like Austin Cindric, whose father owns or runs Penske. He could be a great candidate for that 2 car. I still think that's likely. But the fact that Roger Penske hasn't even begun contract negotiations with Brad Keselowski, we're nearly halfway through this year. He gave Ryan Blaney, who I know he won Talladega a couple weeks ago, but let's be honest, all 4 of his wins outside of maybe Pocono, his first win, kind of been flukes. If you look at all of his wins for Team Penske, he kind of got that lucky win at the Roval in 2018 because Jimmy and Truex wrecked. He won Talladega last year in a photo finish. He won Talladega this year in a photo finish. I mean, Blaney's good. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a very good driver, but he gave that guy, who has not been a championship threat yet in his young career, he gave that guy a 3-year extension at the very beginning of this season, and he has not even had a conversation with his championship-winning driver, Brad Keselowski, and we're almost into July. To me, that sounds like the two sides don't really see eye to eye. Now, in that report, it says Roger Penske might come to the table with new terms, and if Brad Keselowski is okay with those new terms, then Brad Keselowski might stay with Penske. I mean, he gave him his biggest opportunity in the Cup Series, and Keselowski's made the most of it. I'd say that relationship has been pretty good. They've been together for all 9 years roughly, and won a championship, won a whole lot of races. Keselowski's had a great run with Penske, so he might opt to stay with Penske, even if the terms aren't quite what he's looking for. But man, if I'm Brad Keselowski, I am picking up the phone and I am trying to get a hold of Rick Hendrick, if Rick Hendrick has not already gotten a hold of Brad Keselowski. Now, Rick Hendrick months ago said he would like to put a veteran in that 48 car. Rumors are his thoughts might have changed on that. I've heard Eric Jones's name mentioned as a possibility for that 48. I don't think that would be a good decision for either person involved, but assuming Rick Hendrick is still interested in putting a veteran in that car, which I think would be the wise decision, I don't see why he and Brad Keselowski should not be connected at this moment and negotiating something. With the pandemic, of course, affecting not just NASCAR, but also affecting many of the businesses that some of these team owners are involved with. We've heard about Levine Family Racing. Bob Levine, right on the edge right now. He's literally said in the last month or two that if the economy doesn't get significantly better, he may not race next year. Levine Family Racing might disappear after this season because a lot of the funding comes from his business, which isn't doing well because of the pandemic. So with all of those added variables at play here, affecting sponsorship, affecting all sorts of things with these teams, I will say this year's silly season is likely going to take longer to develop, which we've kind of already seen. Aside from Blaney getting that extension, Alex Bowman got an extension as well. We hear Eric Jones is in talks with Joe Gibbs Racing for a possible extension, but aside from from some of those, I get the feeling it's still going to be weeks, maybe months before a lot of the biggest dominoes start to fall in terms of this year's silly season. There are still a lot of question marks all around the Cup Series this year, in the Xfinity Series as well, so I wouldn't expect to get a whole lot of answers anytime too soon, but thought that was interesting. An update on Brad Keselowski's situation with Team Penske. I just think it's crazy that they haven't even started negotiations. I mean, he's won so many races for Penske. I mean, he's been his best driver for so many years. You know, I just seem surprised. Anywho, let me know what you guys think about all of the things that were discussed in this episode. That's all I've got. Thank you all for watching this episode of Out of the Groove. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Subscribe if you are new. We have Mark Martin coming on the show later this week. Wednesday night, the NASCAR Weekly Podcast is on this channel. We'll be live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Mark Martin, as well as fellow YouTuber Slap Shoes, will be on, so that is going to be fantastic. Don't want to miss that. Set your timers, mark your calendars. It's in less than 48 hours, less than whatever time it is. It's tomorrow night. We'll be sure to be there. Big thank you, of course, to my Patreon supporters. As always, this show would not be what it is without all of your continued support. So if you also want to support the show, check out that top link down in the description. I greatly appreciate it. Got the live stream tomorrow night with Hall of Famer Mark Martin. That's going to be exciting. Expect more videos later this week as well. We have Indianapolis this weekend, a doubleheader, NASCAR, IndyCar, road course, oval. Gonna be crazy, all on NBC this time. New broadcast for the first time this year. Gonna be a lot of fun, lots to talk about between now and then, so I will see you all soon. Take care, everyone.